We continue our working day. Please welcome Anatoliy Matios, Deputy General Prosecutor and the Chief Military Prosecutor of Ukraine, who will speak about the results of prosecution officers' work in Ukraine. Good afternoon, dear audience. In the GPO, we have two key messages to convey there related to operations of the Chief Military Prosecution Office. The General Prosecutor of Ukraine took a decision today to establish in the scope of the Military Prosecution Office of Ukraine a department to investigate crimes against humanity, law and orders. It will comprise 34 persons and will deal exclusively with investigating cases of and criminal investigation of cases as relates to finding documentary evidence to such cases, filing the cases to courts, and procuring court decisions concerning aggressive war actions by Russia on the territory of Ukraine, their assistance to terrorist organizations of Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic. That is to say, we are going to have a single department to deal solely with these matters within the scope of the General Military Prosecution Office. And I'd like to remind all of you present here and our viewers that the GPO, effective from 26 September of last year, has established its General Military Prosecution Office. And the Military Prosecution Office is ready to present its report, annual report, September of the past year to September of this year. On 14th of August, the Parliament adopted the law to change the law on General Prosecution Office, and it was subsequently signed by our Chief Army Commander, President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko. A couple of words about the structure of the document of the GPO. It comprises the main military prosecution office, military prosecution offices in regions, also military prosecution office for the anti-terrorist operation area, and 29 military prosecution offices at garrisons. The total number of military personnel in the military prosecution office is presented here, and 112 of them are investigators. Here you can see the information about all the paramilitary forces and other forces authorized to protection and security functions. And you can see the numbers of these forces. And this is about the military forces, 235,000 military police, 45,000 of the National Guard, and then the data on the border service, the external surveillance service, and the state security service of Ukraine. That is to say, 560 military prosecutors have among their competencies also functions to provide the rule of law and to investigate law violations among military servicemen. And given the number of military forces and the number of military prosecutors, you can see that there is a bit of disparity. The competences of the main military prosecution office includes relevant functions related to the law on the Prosecution Office of Ukraine, also in respect of budgetary fund spending, maintenance of state security, and monitoring of activities of Ukroboronprom and other related companies, also in relation to permits to exports of double use and military goods and equipment. It also includes the state space agency of Ukraine. Now a bit about our performance results. Let me inform you that 112 investigators in the structure of the Military Prosecution Office have given review of 15,536 cases opened by prosecution authorities of all levels, which led to 12,755 procedural decisions made, like suspicion, judgments, etc. Almost 2,800 accusatory judgments were motioned to the courts. That is about 63% of the total number of such cases filed with courts. As per categories of offense, 4,741 cases was opened against desertion from the place of service. 6,432 cases were opened against active desertion, and 190 cases were opened for military service dodging. That is the workload for an inspection investigator. If we judge by the number of cases completed and dockets sent to court, makes about 25, and in the ATO area and in the southern region more than 30 dockets per month. You can imagine physically those miles and miles of documents to be produced, and the level of workload of those people that have to work nearly every day without weekends. To provide it in a more visual way, we can just see who has been brought to criminal responsibility. So ex-Prime Minister of Ukraine Azarov, Defense Minister Yezhel, ex-head of Ukrospecsekpert, the hero of Ukraine, Mr. Bodnarchuk. In the Ministry of Defense, criminal investigation and arrest concerned one major general, two admirals, two counter-admirals, 5 state security officers did the same. One major general was taken to criminal responsibility. In the National Emergency Services, one major general was taken to criminal responsibility, and Lieutenant General was taken under arrest, and criminal investigation was opened against him, bringing the case to the court in the State Border Service. Besides, the General Military Prosecution Office open criminal investigation in the case of Lozitsky, and the case was brought to the court. An international search warrant was issued to ex-Kyiv Oblast Prosecutor General Babenko. Next slide. You can see second names of those persons. You you will be delivered the information on compact discs to check it later on. No need to read these names aloud, but these are the names that show how active and dynamic the work of our institution has been. High treason cases brought to court were carried out against Mr. Big. 25 Federal Security Service of Russian Federation officers have been issued arrest warrants for their involvement in the killings during the Revolution of Dignity, systematic kickbacks and bribing cases gave rise to cases against Kramatorsk General's prosecution and
These were done by military prosecutors in ATO area. Also, the cases filed to court about Odessa Military Commissioner Peskum last week. He was found when he was taking bribe. Besides criminal cases, other investigations were carried out during the last year. During the last year, each officer of the military prosecutor's office, due to his additional functions like supervision, monitoring, participation in the court proceedings, returned more than 2 million hryvnia to the state. Actually, each prosecutor returned to the state 1.5 million hryvnia. The salaries of military prosecutors are between 4,000 and 6,000 hryvnia. The disciplinary responsibility was imposed upon more than 5,000 people. These are administrative protocols filed to court for further punitive actions. Also, these infographics present how much money were returned to the state budget due to the financial claims put forward by the military prosecutors. Despite the situation in the ATO and generally bad economic situation, we managed to return more than 9 hectares of land to disposal of the Ministry of Defense, which were illegally privatized. Also, the anti-corruption activity of the military prosecutor's office amounts to 647 million hryvnia. We have brought back that money to the state or filed cases to court about paying them back. And all those cases were filed to court. During the last six months, we filed 54 different cases about top officials and filed them to court. And this year, we have opened 3 criminal proceedings about 32 suspects. We directly participated in drafting of the draft in drafting the law on prosecutor's office, we have opened
До моменту їх розгортання це липень.
We have opened special detention points for the military units. Also, we have documented and filed to court for 34 cases of bribes taken by military commissioners or medical commissions employees who help to avoid mobilization. For non-provision of the appropriate level of enrollment to the military service. Also, the cases were investigated and the guilty people were punished. Also, we carry out big analytical work. In result of this analysis, the Prosecutor General has forwarded to the President the following documents: a report on fulfillment of the mobilization, about the general combat capacity of the military forces of Ukraine. Also, we provided our papers to the National Security of Defense Council, satisfied members of parliament requests on information, and Verkhovna Rada considered the following question, raising the status of the servicemen, preservation of the munition, introducing limitations on sale of alcoholic drinks in the localities close to military units. You know, that tragedy when servicemen who were drunk, they committed a road accident and the child was killed in the result of that accident. Also, we suggested changes to the anti-terrorism law, etc., and to some other laws. Besides all that figures, I would like to comment that we feel big support on behalf of the Prosecutor General. Unfortunately, the former military prosecutor's office was dismissed in 2012. Many human resources were retired, and when in 2014 we tried to revive it, it appeared to be not so easy. Probably we have not done everything necessary, but we develop ourselves, we grow up, and we become more and more experienced. Every day on the territory of Ukraine, we work jointly with this special security service of Ukraine, and we every day reveal and detain those who take bribes. For example, yesterday we detained 4 military officers for illegal criminal activities. Now I can answer just 3 questions and then I need to leave. Irina Shevchenko.
Mr. Anatoliy, last April you mentioned 459 persons killed under Ilovaisk, and prosecution's statement later on already mentioned 356. What is the reason behind such a difference? Actually, it's a matter to rejoice, because the number went lower than greater in order to identify who exactly died under Ilovaisk. All of the casualties and losses were taken into account. That happened from 1st of August till 5th of September, when Minsk agreements were signed. And those who took part in that, also military servicemen who were not recorded, that as members of a variety of paramilitary units and detachments, we had to look for them, seek for them all over Ukraine, essentially. Some of them who were declared missing in action without any relevant documents could be later on found somewhere in the western Ukraine in hospitals, and we had to check for each hospital, each clinic, each rehabilitation center to come up with final number. The number of killed and wounded and missing in action corresponds to the number of relevant numbers, including those who took part in those events. And in the situation that emerged because of direct invasion from Russia, with numbers 16 times greater than those of Ukrainian forces. There was information about a head of headquarters from a National Guard unit said to siphon information to insurgents is about to be brought to court. Do you know anything to add about this? Thanks to restoration of our institution and establishment of a military counter-surveillance department, we've been regularly working to identify potential threats contributing to treason cases or disclosure of classified information. I'm not going to give you the name until the investigation is over. And this should be a thorough investigation that will collect all the data and evidence, not just technical data. And there are military investigators working on that, and I'd like to tell you that as soon as we came across a situation that concerns the need to collect huge amount of data to form the case and form the docket, we managed to amend the list of mandatory expert assessments, also polygraph ones. And from that moment on, every attempt of polygraph inspection will result in its adoption as a valid evidence in the case. And these experts have started to being actively introduced for the past 3 weeks, and they're extensively used by courts and judges before deciding preventive detention measures to be taken and further assessment of circumstances in the case. Would you still comment on the situation with Tornado Battalion servicemen? Are you going to dismiss the whole of battalion or not? You probably heard it that based on the order of the General Prosecutor, we in the Military Prosecution Office had to engage in the criminal case against Tornado, the battalion that was initially on the territory of Luhansk Oblast. We had to detain and arrest 8 militiamen, and we had to conduct a lot of investigatory activities, and we expect that by 15th or 20th of September, we will be through with a range of expertise, immunological expertise included, regarding the evidence collected around Severodonetsk. And as soon as we are through with this analysis, we will complete our docket that we will send to the court. And I can tell you that this is a huge nonsense when law enforcement agencies become involved in criminal activities against their own citizens. And it is even more abysmal when people from law enforcement agencies kill their own colleagues. As we saw it near the walls of the parliament recently. People who have clear criminal inclinations may not be allowed to law enforcement positions, however strong their patriotic feelings are. There are also cases when people who valiantly fight for the country in a day become fierce criminals at night. And I also mean some people from Tornado in this case. And we need to really observe the rule of law principle when the law is equally mandatory for everyone. Without it, we're risking going into the abyss of lawlessness. And we try to work really professionally in our military prosecution office to see that the rule of law is observed ultimately. You know that people would say that rather than explaining where you work, or what is your office, just tell where are you from and everything will be clear. And you know, this is the case when... Thank you, Mr. Matios.